Okay, everyone. I really hope that this works now. Michi seems to be properly connected again, and Tim also
Yep.
was audible to me. So let's try this
Hey,
again. Tim, do you want to say
Okay.
a couple of words?
yeah, sorry for the hassle, everyone. We seem to have some technical difficulties there, but we're back on board now.
Yeah. And now you're listening to yourself. But, okay. Well, let's find a better way to do this in the future. We are new to this. Everybody thinks that we're a big, giant organization, and we are not. So let's get on with it, I guess. I'm going to go back from my what the fuck face and just, yes.
Great. So, Tim, do you want to remind everyone what you do at the Dogecoin Foundation?
Yeah, sure. I guess it's a bit of an interesting position. I've come on as the products lead, so that's looking at the direction of Dogecoin from the foundation's point of view, what it is that we're trying to achieve, what projects we can bring to the table that are going to help us get there. At the same time, I'm also a software engineer. I'm primarily working on the Giga Wallet project.
And Michi, what's your role at both Dogecoin Core and now the foundation?
Well, with Core, I was, well, I'm not going to say was, because I still intend to participate there. Developer working at the time mostly on fees and hoping to move into ease of use and UI and usability and stuff like that. And I've sort of directed that into what I'm doing at the foundation, which is Libdogecoin, which is designed wholly to allow people who are non-blockchain folks to interact with Dogecoin and integrate Dogecoin into their applications and sites without having to get very, very deep on crypto.
Okay, and just so people also know what I'm doing at the Dogecoin Foundation, together with a couple of other people, I take care of mostly the operational stuff, bookkeeping, legal things, all the kind of rather boring managerial things that crop up and that then have to get done. And despite the kind of slight delay after and slight issues, how about we actually quickly get into the actual questions? So, as initially said, we've solicited questions on Twitter, on our Discord server, and if you want to ask questions in future, please also either get in touch on Twitter or there, because that's the easiest way to get in touch with us or ask questions for these events. So, as the first question, which was asked by Doge Marine on Twitter, how do you see Dogecoin and future and further on cryptocurrency coexisting with governments and its long-term effects on the world? And Tim had a couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I think that despite what some people hope, the cat's really out of the bag on crypto. It's not going back in. Now that crypto's been invented, it's not going to be uninvented, and governments are going to have to deal with that. It's sort of a complicated issue, but Dogecoin, I believe, is one of the few cryptos still existing that is focusing on the early idea of crypto, that it's a legitimate currency replacement. From a government point of view, it's just to answer the question, I believe we're heading into a period of global financial instability. We're seeing that at the moment. Since World War II, the reserve currency of the world has been the US dollar. That seems to be, there's a question around that now. People are starting to look at alternatives. Maybe it shouldn't be a nationally backed currency. I don't know where that's going to go, but certainly crypto provides an interesting answer to that problem. Recent weeks and months, we've seen nations around the world looking at other options. Can crypto provide a reserve currency for the world? And if that's the case, how are governments going to respond to that? That's really not up to me, but it's certainly one possibility. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think.
Am I muted? No, I'm not. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Jens.
go ahead, Michi. If you want to say something, happy to.
Um, I do think that probably so. For years, governments and countries were sort of the stewards of reserves, whereas I do think that it's possible that communities and communities defined across country boundaries could end up being the stewards of reserves in the future. And that does leave room for more than one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the community's point is really interesting. When I was young, the internet didn't really exist in the way it does now. And I look at what it's done for people. It's put people together. Is it going to do the same thing for currency, the way that we spend money?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have to acknowledge that there's people who see cryptocurrency as something that has terrible externalities largely, and that comes with a huge cost that, if you're pessimistic, might not go away. And I think we have to acknowledge Stefan Diehl, who's a very famous critic of cryptocurrencies, kind of, and not, I think, always with the greatest kind of arguments, but who does bring up a couple of good points. Earlier today or yesterday, for some of you, wrote a thread basically arguing that all private currencies not issued by states are bad, and that you can kind of be axiomatically against all kind of private currencies. And, well, I mean, you can be, and I can certainly see where he's coming from with some traditional currencies that were issued by private entities, but at the same time, private currencies in the broadest sense have been around forever, and were also kind of the original currencies that existed. So opposing the idea of privately issued currencies that can be used in small communities or groups, I think, is a little bit of a senseless debate that doesn't result in anything. I think that cryptocurrency in many ways does offer access for more people, and does offer the promise for access to more people. But at the same time, I am, as someone who's been around since pretty much the beginning of cryptocurrency, and who initially didn't so much get into it for the libertarian perspective that a lot of people endorsed, but for the kind of technological curiosity and also the interest in what might be possible with private currencies like that. I think that you really have to look at individual usage cases, individual currencies, and I think you can find value in there, and that there can be something good for the world. But at the same time, you can't. The incredible proliferation of cryptocurrencies is kind of an issue which sort of solves itself, because there's very few cryptocurrencies that have a great name that's known by many people. But on the other hand, it still leads to a lot of distractions, a lot of scams, and a lot of problems. And I think we are going to see a crackdown on this in the future that will kind of catalyze this to a few cryptocurrencies. Yes, me.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to speak to on that is, if you look at the test for what a security is and isn't, it being a replacement currency is one of the primary aspects that fails it as a security. So, with Dogecoin not being aimed as a investment vehicle, people do it, but it's not what it's meant for. It is definitely positioned as a currency, and a currency to be used and spent. That also makes it explicitly not a security. So a lot of these other things out there that where cryptocurrency is getting its bad name are from investment vehicles that are acting as securities. And they position themselves at that, saying that it's going to go to the moon next week. Double your profits or whatever like that. They are really playing with fire with that. And that's something we hope to not be positioning Dogecoin as. It's just a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah, that's a
the whole
really great
community,
point
hopefully.
and a really good point to consider. Just the question is it yeah, in the US the Howey test, is it a security, which asks separate questions, including this: is it being used with the expectation of making an investment profit from it? Yeah, I agree that's kind of one of the defining factors of Dogecoin, that it wasn't started to be an investment vehicle, and I think largely the community still doesn't think of it as purely an investment vehicle or even chiefly an investment vehicle, even if it has increased in value. I think that's a really good point to bring up.
Well, we
And
certainly don't. It's not the
Well,
focus
currencies,
from a development point of view.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, we definitely are concentrated on adoption and usability. And I think another point of that test was if it's assumed central purveyor promises a profit, and a lot of these other ones out there do. And of course, Dogecoin will never do that because there is no central authority, and nobody's going to be promising you that you'll be rich next week or anything like that. So let's go to the next one.
Except Matt Wallace.
let's not talk about
Oh,
that
well, yeah.
film. But
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah.
staying positive about things, what do you think are positive things about
Well,
cryptocurrency that people forget?
Independence on banking institutions. Okay, so I guess Tim has already answered that. I didn't want to steal your thunder, Tim, but that's the biggest thing, is you have people who are unbanked and they're denied by banks to even have an account or to be lended to, where all of that is based on person-to-person and community-to-community reputation with crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, what are some of the positive things that people forget about? It puts people back in control of their finances. I look at, I certainly wasn't there. I imagine pirates hauling around their huge chests of treasure. That was pretty cool. Like, if I had a huge chest of treasure, I'd like to carry it around, on my sailing ship as well. Well, I can do that with my cold wallet now, and that's a bit weird, but yeah, I don't know. That's one of the positives that I think. I feel like people should be given the opportunity and the freedom to exercise their own financial destiny, and not have that just pulled out of their control by some sort of central organization. And to me, that's the biggest positive thing about crypto.
I have some of my keys on a physical keychain, like got a little USB drive on there. And I like thinking about the fact that wherever I go, if I end up in a bad situation, I can maybe get out of it. If I can, if I can figure out some way to get a hotel or a hostel for the night or something like that, and get a car or something and get myself out of trouble. So, I mean, that's a little bit, I guess that's libertarian. It's more prepper, but it is something that I think is neat about crypto.
I've heard stories just recently. I can't remember what country it was, but there was people fleeing as refugees from war, and going through checkpoint after checkpoint and having people take away the jewelry, take away the things in their bags, and then getting to the other end and remembering 12 words, and then having all their finances back again. That's pretty powerful.
Right. Keeping in mind wallet. Yep, that is very powerful because they can't extract that from you. I mean, they can. Well, they could. I don't want to get into that, but they ostensibly cannot. But yeah, that's as sort of a backup thing, and it is about control and about how they can't take everything away from you. That can be used for bad ends as well, but it can also be used for good ends. So, I guess the next one is, does the price of Doge affect development? I want to say a few things to that, and it's pretty much the first answer. I think I'm going to definitely speak to that. When the hype train is running, we get very, very busy because suddenly everybody is our friend, and that's temporary, of course. And they all assume that we suddenly became rich, which we're not. And they're either asking us for money, asking us for favors, asking us for attention, asking us to speak. So yeah, that takes time away from development, absolutely. And I did not get into this to be some kind of movie star, so I mean that's why you don't see me on video. It's just not my thing. That's not what I want to do. There are people out there who want to be influencers for Dogecoin, and they can pump up the price as much as they want. That's not what we do. So if anything, it definitely affects development. But when people go and say something like "devs do something," the price is going down. That's what we can't affect, and that's what we will not try to affect. And there are very, very good reasons for that, some of which we already spoke about the security thing. But it certainly is a distractor. But we won't do anything to manipulate development whatsoever, to manipulate the price whatsoever via development.
Yeah, and I think there's a really good point there about the decentralized nature of the Dogecoin community. That we are fundamentally a bunch of disparate development people and groups working collaboratively. And that's good for Dogecoin because it means if one group of people decided they wanted to manipulate the currency, there are checks in place where another group would come in and say, point that out pretty quickly, and that would get shut down. And that's one of the strengths of Dogecoin.
And how this was originally intended, yeah. Burns and stuff, exactly. You have development groups doing burns to try and raise the price, not of Dogecoin, but like of other dog-themed coins that talk about how much they burn to try to raise the price. That is market manipulation, and that is not something we are going to do.
And it's also just kind of weird from a just economic perspective, because especially if you have tokens or cryptocurrencies which are limited issuance in the first place, it kind of becomes weird if you then start burning your cryptocurrency, because you're, yes, in a purely mathematical sense, the price would go up if the demand for that cryptocurrency remained the same.
That
but you're
never really happens,
reducing the utility of your cryptocurrency. So I kind of wonder what drives these people, honestly.
I've got a great answer for those people, and it tends to put them back in their box. I just say, well, look, if you want to burn Dogecoin, you buy some and burn it, and then they usually shut up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they never want to burn theirs. They want to burn other people's Dogecoin. So,
yeah, but talking about these things, how about we actually go to one of the things that's rather controversial about the things the foundation has been trying to work on and that we've been trying to look into, namely proof of stake. There's been a lot of questions about the proof of stake proposal that we teased as part of the trail map, and that we've talked about a little bit, that Tim talked about a little bit in the last AMA. And Tim, any update on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I keep getting questions. It's probably the most asked thing. When are we going to see a proposal about proof of stake? We put out a trail map or a roadmap for other people, and I just wanted to emphasize that is a series of dependent steps, and proof of stake proposal was right at the end of that. It's worth mentioning that there's a lot of groundwork that we're trying to cover to be able to get into a position where it makes sense to come up with a proposal. For instance, we're trying to come up with what we're calling the Dogecoin standard, which is basically a documented a set of documents that explain how the current Dogecoin protocol works. Because we would love to see a lot of different proposals for the future of Dogecoin from different people, but you've got to have a basis to work from. If you're gonna say I'm gonna make this change, well, what are you actually changing? At the moment, we point at the core wallet implementation and say that is Dogecoin. And if you want to go and read all of the code and then make a proposal on how you would change that, great. The Dogecoin standard is essentially saying, here are the protocols, here is how the blockchain works. Once we've got that, the idea that a proposal to change to something else or make any sort of change, not necessarily the proof mechanism, but any sort of change to how Dogecoin works, could in fact be a document that describes how that changes the actual protocol. So you've got, here's the Dogecoin standard, which is just some documentation, and here's my proposal on what I want to change. And then people can actually have a qualitative conversation about that. So that, to me, that has to be a preceding step to coming up with any sort of proposal. Secondly, we're working on Libdogecoin. Oh, sorry, you go, Mishi.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the whole proof of stake thing, because I'm seeing a lot in the community of people who are afraid and angry, and it comes from the premise that we, the Dogecoin Foundation, are going to go and change the method of validation on Dogecoin. Number one, that cannot happen. Anybody who is worried about this needs to really look into how consensus works on the blockchain. And people are saying, oh, well, it'll result in a fork. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But by the time it's in code and on the blockchain, ready for a fork to either be taken or not, the entire scene is going to look so different than it does right now. We're talking about a long-term, long-reach thing here. We're not talking about people will wake up in a month or at the end of the year and suddenly their miners won't work, or anything even close to that. And we're not going to be ramming this into the community or anything like that. But the thing is that a lot of people are upset at us even talking about it. But that's what we're doing right now, is talking about it. And it certainly has started a conversation. And it's a conversation that at least needs to be had.
Yeah,
because we're going to be facing a lot of challenges. I mean, you look at the mining situation now compared to the mining situation 5 years ago, and it's completely different. You used to be able to use a USB stick to mine some stuff, and it was no problem. Now we've got giant warehouses full of machines. And it's going to change further. So what we would be remiss to do is not at least have a path, a backup, something that we can go to that we've worked on if the scene changes quickly. But there is no rule that says that our implementation of proof of stake is going to be the way it's going to be. Nothing even says that's going to be proof of stake. We are suggesting something to get the community talking, to get us talking, and making plans for an alternative if things change. And to have that conversation already flowing by the time the changes happen can only help us. Nobody's committing to anything. Nobody is saying that it's the way it's going to be, and nobody's going to force the community to do anything.
Yeah, and I think this touches on two things that we also get asked a lot. On the one hand, also with the Dogecoin standard, one of the things people might say, of course, is, well, Ethereum has the Ethereum proposals and Bitcoin has Bitcoin proposal documents. Why aren't you doing the same just for Dogecoin? And yes, that's true. And there's been a considerable amount of community work to better document those currencies as well, of course. But one of the things that's so great about Dogecoin, and has always been so great about Dogecoin, is its approachability. And as a huge nerd myself, I don't fault people who have worked on Ethereum since 2014 for the manifold proposals that are incredibly complicated and incredibly technical and derived from the core implementations. But at the same time, I think Dogecoin has this kind of chance to really be broader in who it involves also in these proposals and in thinking about these proposals. And one of the ideas we've had with how we are developing software, and then Tim can talk about or give a little update on the things he's been working on, as well as Michi in a little bit, is really giving people who aren't very technical, who aren't incredibly sophisticated about cryptocurrencies, the tools and the ways to even discuss this with other people and contribute to these questions. And I think that's something that we really should emphasize with Dogecoin as well, because it takes kind of Dogecoin's accidental role in the cryptocurrency community a bit more seriously and turns that into something that can be something good and something that really helps people and really introduces people to cryptocurrency and the nuances of how the different consensus mechanisms work and things like that.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Jens, because I've heard it said that software engineers will spend 90% of their time understanding a system and then 10% of their time changing it. And so from an efficiency point of view, if we can speed up that process of people understanding the system by providing better documentation, cleaner, simpler implementations, and better abstractions, that's going to allow anyone to get in faster. It's about lowering that barrier to entry. And that really speaks to the heart of why we're building out Libdogecoin, for instance. And Misha can talk more about that in a minute. But fundamentally, it's what's the most straightforward implementation that we can have, so people can read the code, not get bogged down in reading about Qt desktop clients and that sort of thing. Just understand the blockchain. Again, with like the Giga wallet project, it's about providing an abstraction for people who are trying to build shopping carts and that sort of thing, integrated in with payment platforms, so that they can work on a level without having to dig deeper, but then providing them the documentation and the resources, so if they want to dig deeper, they can. And providing a clear learning path from, hey, I'm just doubling, hey, I'm just trying to add some Dogecoin to my shopping cart, or whatever it is they're trying to do. And then, hopefully that's the gateway drug that gets them hooked, and they go all the way through and become a crypto engineer.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, you have things like the Bitcoin wiki that's out there, and I mean, I hope people know that we're also developing a Dogecoin wiki that people can go to, that can where people can look at these resources and not have to reinvent the wheel and not have to remake the discoveries that we have. And something like Libdogecoin, I hope to have a really good documented instruction manual, essentially, where if you're coming into this and you want to build something like something like a Dogecoin wallet or a site that uses Dogecoin, you don't have to get into the weeds of, Coinbases and Merkle roots and all. I mean, that's stuff that people can learn and they should if they're getting into crypto, but it shouldn't be a requirement to integrate Dogecoin. And some of the Libdogecoin test command line stuff that my coworker Blueser has developed, if you look at that, it'll walk you through forming a transaction step by step and lets you see what's going on every time you add an input or an output, and you watch the transaction get built. And that's really big because there's nothing out there yet like that for things like Bitcoin. I mean, there are, but they're really, really deep. You have to know exactly what you're doing and where these fields are supposed to be and where they're coming from to do that. Whereas, we're looking at something that will really hold people's hand in a way. And I know some people may not like that because you don't want the dumbing down of cryptocurrency, but it's not really that. It's more the mainstreaming of it and allowing normal people to access it, even normal developers who've never done anything in their life with crypto. Dogecoin actually becomes a learning point for that, even if they don't want to stick only with Dogecoin. So if somebody implements something with Dogecoin, they're going to learn something. They're going to learn how crypto works, and they'll go on to use that knowledge in other cryptos as well. So, but
Yeah.
Dogecoin has always been that. So we've always been the learning and starting currency.
I think, that's a really good point. I mean, I look back at my developer career over the last 20 years, and I think back to the first, the first introduction to programming that I had with a bunch of Unix nerds sitting around in an office, and it was really a go read the fine manual if you want to learn. And don't talk to me sort of attitude. And I remember the change that really happened in the open source community when things like Python, things like Ruby, started to gain more momentum. And I think a lot of that was around the open and welcoming attitude to newbies, really. These are programming languages that had great documentation, great communities, were really welcoming to people who weren't necessarily the what was considered what a developer should look like at the time, and that really blew open the developer scene. And then I see a lot of people who've come through those communities going on to learning, more traditional languages, statically typed languages, and things like that. And I would credit that to the communities that they came through, like the Python community. Similarly, why did the group of people in the UK come up with a Raspberry Pi? Like, we've got way more powerful computers. Well, because they wanted something that was simple that you could hand to someone and they could learn about programming.
Simple,
we would like
friendly,
Dogecoin to be that. Exactly. Yep. And so, if we can do that for crypto, and that's certainly something that we're focusing on at the foundation is and this isn't to do with making changes to Dogecoin or anything like that. It's just, how can we be a welcoming, friendly community that, brings new people into the scene? Because that's going to be better for Dogecoin. It's going to be better for crypto in general. I think it's just better for the world.
Like with Ruby, you have the philosophy that they have of Mina Swan, which is Mats is nice, so we are nice. I really, we have to do only good every day. So, I mean, we're trying to instill that, where you have these other cryptos that I keep on saying serious as a heart attack. And I really kind of like that we're maintaining some of the lighthearted and the nice, So we need
exactly.
So let's move on. I don't know.
Well, we skipped the question about the current status of the project simply because that fit in better if we first covered this. So, Tim, do you want to, or Michi, whoever wants to start?
You want me to start with? I mean, I was just talking about Lib, but
yeah, go for it.
But yeah, so Lib is really, really close to a 0.1 release. So it's not a 1.0 release. It won't do everything, but it's going to be into people's hands soon so they can play with it. And it's going to have address and HD address generation, child address generation, and transaction formation. Again, you can even use the command line tool, which we have called such, such.exe or such.executable, that will walk you through forming a transaction. And, so those are the two silos, the 2 points that we wanted to get working for basic functionalities, address and transaction formation for the 0.1 release. And that should be within weeks. I say that actually a little bit pessimistically. It should be sooner than that, but I don't want to box myself in here. So, but folks should see that soon.
You and Bruiser have already... Yeah, I was just going to say, you and Bruiser have already taken transactions and committed them onto the blockchain from that tool, haven't you?
Yes, we have. It was testnet because, we don't want to be too crazy. But, actually the first transaction with Libdogecoin is going to go into the wiki as an example. And it'll point to the testnet transaction, show exactly how the one before it was taken apart and how the next one was formed, and how inputs traveled from one transaction to the other. So we have all that in nerd documentation, and we have to do the make pretty phase, but people can follow that and make their own transaction with Lib, forming everything from scratch, hopefully within soons.
Yeah, fantastic. I guess Giga Wallet's the other big project that we're focusing on at the moment. That's really, it's predicated on Libdogecoin. So as soon as the 0.1 release is out, we can integrate that work in. I'm building that out in Golang, which is kind of nice because you can just call down into C libraries. So I can just import Libdogecoin and work directly from that, which I've been experimenting with over the last week, and it's pretty cool. But further Giga Wallet news, we've been talking to some people who are interested in integrating Dogecoin payments into their sales platforms and that sort of thing. We've been collaborating on essentially a payment protocol that sits. This isn't part of Dogecoin, the layer one. But it's a simple payment protocol which lets you say, hey, here's your shopping cart. Do you want to pay with Dogecoin? In such a way that if you have a like a non-custodial wallet, like MyDoge or Ledger or something like that. I don't know whether Ledger are going to integrate this, but the idea would be you can get a payment request that essentially has, here are all the items you're buying, and you're buying, 3 pairs of shoes and a hat, and this is the total. You can then sign a transaction on your mobile phone or something like that that gets sent back to Giga Wallet and transacted on the blockchain. So that's what we're trying to get to there. It's still a ways off. There's a fair bit of work to do, but we're really hopeful that this is going to provide the building blocks for people to start integrating Dogecoin more holistically into, I don't know, different payment platforms, Shopify maybe, who knows, things like that. Like, we want to see more and more people accepting Dogecoin, and we just want to make that as easy as possible for them so that there's a drop-in service that they can use. What else? Radio Doge. Okay. Mishi, how's that going?
Yeah, so finally the snow has started to melt here. So actually in my background there, that is my tower that we've had for years. A number of us have had. It's kind of our hobby station, Soul Long Lines Tower. And we are going to...
That's your tower, your personal tower.
That is my tower.
That's amazing.
Yes, and it was actually really not as expensive as people think, because AT&T got rid of them en masse and just wanted to get rid of them. So a couple nerds bought them up. 3 nerds in this case. But yeah.
That's amazing.
So, yeah. So that's going to be my backhaul experiment. So I know some other people are working on some radio front end stuff. I am too, of course, but they're kind of going from the outside in, and I want to work on this from the inside out, working on the Starlink node and reaching out to the backhaul to the smaller nodes that can talk. So next weekend, I'm planning on spending the whole weekend down there putting up the backhaul, which is the HF long distance link that will talk directly to Libdogecoin sitting at the base of this tower, connecting to the rest of the nodes through Starlink. And we have 2 Starlink nodes out there now. So 2 dishes with redundancy. And that tower will distribute the link to talk to those Starlink nodes to the sheep stations, the little portable community hubs that we have some experimenters willing to have at their houses and their land, and hopefully some handheld models, very, very cheap. Right now, there's an issue with Raspberry Pis being completely unobtainium. You cannot get a Raspberry Pi 4 to save your life right now, so I'm working on it with some other things like Odroids and things that aren't quite as fun and sexy, but hopefully that will not be a permanent situation, and we can get little units into the community's hands to talk to the local hubs for under $40 is what I'm hoping. So, and that's just cost of parts. Of course, there's never going to be any profit in that. That's not what we're looking for. So, if we can do a large production run, get the cost down, But hopefully we'll get the first radio transaction on this project by next weekend, maybe a little after. That's
exciting. And I guess that just then leaves the Dogecoin standard, which, it sounds all mystical and stuff, but really it's, like I said, it's just documentation. That's coming out of the work that Libdogecoin was happening on Libdogecoin. So as we're going through the different, parts of Dogecoin, the protocols, like as Mishi said, building addresses, building transactions, Michi and Blues are doing an amazing job at documenting, as she said, the low level stuff that needs to be then prettified, made more consumable. But that's those descriptions of how the protocol works and how transactions are formed. That's forming the basis of the Dogecoin standard documentation. So that's an ongoing work in progress. Did that answer the question? Yes.
I just want to.
Sorry, Mishi.
I just want to add one thing. That communities will not need powers like this to operate Radio Doge. I'm just doing it because we can. A tree will do. So we'll just don't think that that's a prerequisite or anything like that. So.
I mean, there's one thing that we might actually also want to mention, which is the website.
Oh, right, yeah. There's been a huge amount of work from the community, going into the new Dogecoin.com website. That's needed a facelift for a long time. The volunteers working on that have just been amazing. CB, who's Doge designer on Twitter, has done all the design work for that. You've got people like Misha Bohr, Richard, and people who have been contributing to the Dogepedia, which is going to be a really big part of that. It's just going to be factual information, importantly on independent URLs that answer common questions that people have around Dogecoin. So that the community can just link people when people are spreading FUD. You can just be like, hey, here's a link that explains why you're full of whatever you're full of. FUD.
Fine manual.
Yeah, exactly. That's really in the final stages of there's some CSS tweaks happening, and there's a debate around right now about SAS versus Bootstrap framework or something like that. But it's all coming together. We're hoping to have a preview up of that soon. So in the next week or two, I would say that there would be a preview URL where the community can go and have a look and say much wow or not, because we really want to get some feedback. And then if everyone seems happy with it, we'll flick the switch and it'll be live.
Should be a Radio Doge mini site too.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
We should have a project. We're hoping for like project.dogecoin.com, and not only for foundation projects, for other projects as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. I know we didn't really talk about touching on this, but one of the things that the foundation wants to do is provide a way for Dogecoin projects to be represented to the community. So, if you've got an open source Dogecoin project, we'd love to set you up with potentially like a subdomain of Dogecoin.com, maybe like a mailing list or all the things that tend to go with open source projects, so that people can come to Dogecoin.com and go, okay, look, here are the 10 or 20 different things that people are working on. So, things like, Libdogecoin, Giga Wallet, I know like Core definitely, there should be a subdomain for Core, all the different projects. I was talking with Inevitable 360, who some of you may know from the community, who's worked on something called Doge Garden, which is a PHP, a shop. Like it's an online store that you can just install on your hosting platform, and you can start listing items and selling them in Dogecoin. He was really keen on, that's an open source project. Why isn't that represented underneath the Dogecoin.com website? So that's something that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think, I went over that question because it's another question we've received quite a lot. What is the foundation actually good for? Because the conversation seemed to flow better that way, I thought, because I was pretty sure we would come back to that. And just maybe to add to that, what you just said, Dogecoin started out on Reddit, and that was fine. Lots of people are still using Reddit to interact with Dogecoin, but the power that something like the foundation can have is provide more information in a sort of centralized fashion and take in other projects, take in information from all the different shards of the Dogecoin community on Twitter, on Facebook, on other social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, and as well as on Reddit, and bring them together, provide services for all of them, provide them with a forum where they can exchange ideas with each other and come together, and in that way kind of provide a meeting place for everyone. And I think that's kind of the most powerful thing that we can hope for.
There's a difference between decentralization and fragmentation, I would say. And I think we are dealing a little bit with fragmentation now.
Yes, yes.
And that's just because lines of communication aren't open. And lines of communication have to be open to prevent that.
Yes,
yeah. I mean, there was actually a question from someone. Arno Hatch asks, why do we need a Dogecoin Foundation? It feels like we're starting to answer that question. Through that one over to Jens. Why do we need a Dogecoin Foundation?
Well, I mean, that was kind of what I was trying to answer with that already. But Michi, if you want to say something, happy to.
So with the legal stuff, I know a lot of people may even think they understand things like trademark and the way that other things interact with trademark. But a lot of times they don't. It's not something that the community will just take care of itself, because the laws around trademark and the laws around who can have the Twitter handle, who can have the domain, who can take those things, are all written in a world that's used to organizations. Centralized organizations and businesses is mostly what they're written for. So as much as we can't live in the Star Trek future replicator thing where you can say Earl Grey hot and get it right now, we still got to go and buy our tea. So we have to speak the language of businesses and speak the language of the current laws in order to defend what we have here. And when I say we, I mean the whole community. That being that the Dogecoin Twitter account isn't taken over by some guy who wants to do a pump and dump. Like, you had somebody trying to do that, and he certainly wanted to turn it into something that the community would not like. And the way that works is they will always, a company like Twitter will always defer to the trademark holder. It's just the way it is. There's nothing we can affect about that. It's how it happens. So there has to be an organization to speak the language that all of these other organizations speak. We cannot just go around and say, well, the community wouldn't like that. Well, okay, well, the community is not going to show up in court. The entire community, they can't. It's just not the way the model works. So there has to be a point of contact to defend against these things. And yeah, maybe we're a bunch of evil overlords and we're going to turn it into a sushi shop. We're not, but there's always that worry. But the alternative to that is just letting these people run wild and take things away. So we really are guarding against that. And it's mostly a translation for the rest of the world.
I think that it's worth looking and pointing out at some of these other open source foundations and what they do. So, I would point Arno Hatch, who asked this question, to the Linux Foundation, the Apache Foundation, the Python Software Foundation. There are many examples, and if you look at what they're doing, it comes down to uniting a community without stepping on the community's toes. It comes down to protecting a community without requiring everyone to be swamped by that sort of stuff. I mean, I'll let you know right now that Jens spends most of his time, talking to lawyers. I think he gets hundreds of emails a week. If that was the job of everyone in software development, we'd never get any development work done. And so thank you, Jens, for taking that load off. But the foundation really exists to be able to look holistically at the whole Dogecoin ecosystem, so that individuals can focus on what they do best. Michi can go and focus on radio stuff, and that's really cool, and Libdogecoin, and doesn't have to worry about indirectly doesn't have to be involved in fighting trademark issues, which previously
I am
this is where
still
some
worried
of the,
about those though.
yeah, not true. But this is where much of the burnout came from. I mean, you've probably seen. You may notice that Ross isn't here on the call, and you may have seen the announcement that went out with him stepping back from active development. Have a chat with Ross. He's still out there, and he's still definitely part of the foundation as an advisor. But some of the burnout that happens with people who are trying to hold it down a day job, trying to work on Dogecoin in their spare time, and just, rather than being able to develop and do the things that they want to do, are dealing with trademark issues, dealing with companies trying to come in and get support. The amount of work that goes on with us talking to people on a weekly basis who want to integrate Dogecoin, or they want to use the branding, or they want to they want support because they've done something that's not working. It provides a central place for those sort of people to come and talk to someone.
Yeah, and maybe to just
And there's
add a
also the
couple
issue
of
of
things.
standing.
Sorry, Michi?
Go ahead, yeah.
To just add
Maybe if you
a
can
couple of
address
things to
standing.
that, and maybe also to take away the worry. Yes, I am getting like 100 emails a week on my @Dogecoin address, but the thing with that is a lot of that is spam. So it's not 100 emails a week or not even necessarily spam, but stuff we would just never consider, like, please pump and dump this, or please advertise this, and stuff like that.
Lots of that, yeah.
Yeah, but
so what you're saying is you're a really good spam filter, Jens. Thank you for your
I like the
service.
spam filter we have, so I don't even look at most of those emails. But yeah, it is. This is kind of what the core of the foundation really, and the idea behind the foundation has been. We try to also be open towards the innovation that happens in cryptocurrency and in open source with forks and with other developments. And we're not necessarily looking at starting fights with currencies that develop that are similar to Dogecoin, or that certainly play off of Dogecoin or Dogecoin's popularity. But one of the things that we've kind of been after and that we've been looking into is Dogecoin, as the second most well-known brand in cryptocurrency, according to quite a couple of market research studies that have been done, kind of is something people think about. And one of the cryptocurrencies that was created playing off of Dogecoin's popularity was actually recently warned in the UK, because they advertised saying, missed Dogecoin, invest in us now. And this kind of thing is problematical for them for unfair competition laws and advertising standard laws. But that's not necessarily something we would get involved in. But where we do get involved is when people say, we are Dogecoin and we are doing this, or we have a we are the new Dogecoin, or they call themselves Dogecoin, and they try to mislead people, or there is the chance that people are being misled by that. Because at that point, the community kind of does have to take this seriously. We all love Dogecoin, but if Dogecoin gets dominated by those people, and especially if those people were to get a trademark and could then start harassing services to get like the @Dogecoin name on Twitter, that would be catastrophic for the community, because the community really couldn't defend against that without a foundation that
Right, what I was
exists
trying
to
to
interface
say
with
on that,
the regulators and other people.
right, because you have to have standing, and I just want to add, you have to have standing to be able to do that. In a court of law, there has to be. If you don't have standing, you can't bring forth a case. And the Dogecoin Foundation, as an organization that advocates for Dogecoin, and that is their sole purpose, does have standing to do that, even if their purpose isn't to make a bunch of money. Whereas these other ones may say, well, our purpose is to make a bunch of money with Dogecoin. So you need to have somebody with the proper interest legally to make those arguments.
Yeah, and also to maybe, since you bring up courts, to maybe also reduce worries that have been flying around there. We've actually never sued anyone, and we've never gone so far as to issuing formal letters that would precede such an action, other than cease and desist letters to the people who really just applied for trademarks on Dogecoin, which is, has to be in bad faith, because we're talking about a marketing firm in a country or some random person in Spain who applied for the Dogecoin trademark, who's never worked on Dogecoin, has never had anything to do with Dogecoin, etc. So, yeah, in that case, we did ask our law firm to issue a cease and desist letter. But with every other case that has happened, even with cases that were very clearly bad faith cases, we've always talked to people first. And 99.9% of the things the community has produced and the community continues to produce are perfectly fine, and there's never any question about that. And if there's ever anything that could be problematical, we'll always reach out to the people first. We'll always talk to the people first and try to find some resolution that is short of court proceedings.
Jens, I just want to add, I'm going to say right out, people who go and say that we sent them something, honestly, usually it wasn't what we sent them. There are people who try to make drama about it. I'm not going to name any names, but people probably know who I'm talking about, who said that, oh, we sent them some formal lawsuit letter, or so. That has not happened. And they can say that it was, but what it was probably an email saying, guys, come on, can we talk? I don't think that was me.
Yeah.
Sounds like a piece
I'm not sure. There is a question here from Zach Technodoge, who asked, does the foundation have the capability and resources to issue a lawsuit against individuals or groups abusing Dogecoin intellectual property and trademarks? I guess there's a question there around our resourcing capability. Jens, do you want to answer that one?
I mean, this is kind of a question you can always answer with both yes and no, because international, it kind of depends what you're asking, because international trademark litigation can easily spiral out of control and cost you double digits in millions of dollars. So in that sense, no, we wouldn't. But we also very much pick our battles, and so far have been very, very economical with how we've been working to protect Dogecoin and go against people. Could we file a lawsuit? Yes. Do we have the resources to sue someone? Yeah, sure. It depends on how long that would drag through. Like I wasn't personally involved in a case a couple of years ago with another nonprofit organization, but they started suing a medical product developer that used their trademark, and they initially said, you know, this will cost us like $100,000, $200,000, and they ended up paying something like $4.8 million for their trademark litigation ultimately. So this is really hard to say. What we're trying to do is solve most things before they get to court. There's Dogecoin, because of the incredibly strong brand, even though I don't necessarily like to use that word for something that's so organic and community driven, has a very, very strong claim to that name. And we would probably ultimately win virtually any court case we would bring, because most of the other people who start using Dogecoin in ways that are problematical are very clearly and transparently doing this to make a lot of money, and usually without any kind of connection to Dogecoin, the project, and the people who've worked on Dogecoin for years. So it depends, and we try to do our best there. We're certainly looking
I just
into how to improve
say
that.
As far as individuals go, okay, there really shouldn't be a worry about that. If you're using Dogecoin or wanting to use logos or something like that, the Dogecoin Foundation is not going to be coming after you for that. In fact, if you contacted us, we might be able to help and actually point you in directions of resources and encourage it. Because you know, it's like, oh, I want to make a thing that says Dogecoin. I'm like, you go, and here's how you can do it. So hopefully we want to help the mom and pops and the normal everyday sheeps, not the people who want to take ownership of it and point it somewhere bad. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is also something on the new website where we will have a FAQ that we've been working on that kind of gives everyone a couple of pointers in that direction, and what they definitely can do, and the few things that are really kind of problematical, and again, most of them boil down to you are pretending that you are Dogecoin and trying to defraud people and trying to mislead people. These kinds of
Right.
things are problematical, and I think we can all agree that they are, because and that they harm Dogecoin and the community as a whole. And as Michi said, we're always happy to hear from people. We're always happy to point people in the right direction and help them create stuff for Dogecoin. And as Tim also said, one of the ideas for the foundation is genuinely to take in projects from the community and provide them with infrastructure and assistance as well. And that too flows into that. We'd help you with, or we'd help them with their questions about IP, with their questions
Yeah,
about...
just domain knowledge. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So if you want to make a Dogecoin thingy, talk to us and we can help. I think.
Yeah. Next question. Just Dojit asks, charities and fundraising have been part of the Dogecoin community since the beginning. In the future, which charities and fundraisers will the foundation be interacting with? I suppose is the question. Will the community be given a say in such issues? Yeah, great question. Just Dojit.
So.
I mean, like, yeah. Did you want to answer that one, Michi?
It talks. Yeah, I mean, I don't think what you're going to see is a list of foundation-approved charities that we come up with and say these are the ones we're giving to. I do think you're going to see outreach when we see the community really getting behind a charity that a lot of people have enthusiasm about. We're going to say, hey, let's talk and see how we can make this take this to the next level. So that's probably how we're going to see interaction with charities, is based on a community lead, and then we can support.
We get approached as well. So, Mr. Beast approached Billy around the Team C's initiative, and that's how we got into that. Because why not? Like, it's a great cause. And the community came together and raised a whole heap of money and removed a whole bunch of trash from the ocean. That's just a really good example of the community doing that. But I'd just like to say, it's not the foundation's job to be deciding what the community wants to do, right? Like, the community should be deciding what the community wants to do. And like Michi just said, we're here to boost that signal. So, if the community wants to get behind something, then organize, right? Like, get together with other sheaves, and start something, and we'll help promote that. As long as it's not harming people in the end, it has to come back to doing only good every day.
Yeah, and I think we can also offer some support to charities, because yes, as Tim said, Mr. Beast approached us, but also other charities have approached us in the past, and certainly we can provide help there, and then obviously also provide the community with reassurance. This charity has talked to us. Yes, they're accepting Dogecoin. If you're seeing them advertising that, yes, you can actually donate to that with certainty that ends up with that charity. That's something we can probably do, or where we can at least help. And yeah, if the community has any kind of charities that they're passionate about, they should approach us. They should tell us about that, and I think we'll almost always be happy to signal boost that, as long as they're compatible with the code of conduct that we've developed, and with the ideals that the Dogecoin Foundation and Dogecoin basically has been standing for.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, we've got to interpret that, doing the good every day has to apply to everything that we're doing. And so, if there's a charity that's around, I can't even think of something that's not good, right? Obviously there's a test there. So let us know. Do we have any more questions, Jens?
Well, we have the ultimate question that someone asked: what is the foundation going to do in future about either AMAs, question and answer sessions, maybe in other media? And I think, not just because we've had technical difficulties here, but generally it's I think it's very good to have these video chats and provide video feedback to people, but also I think we should look into other formats. Michi suggested having a podcast, and podcasts certainly have the advantage that we could get more people in that have very tight schedules, our advisors, a lot of community members, where we could ad hoc record a podcast, but which obviously couldn't take 2 hours out of their day to be around during such a video stream. So I think, in terms of how are we going to better communicate with the community, we've played a lot of catch up over the last couple of months on things. We've set up a lot of things, and I'm hoping very much that the community will, in half a year, look back and say, yeah, the foundation is now really transparent about everything. We're providing the things we wanted to provide and giving everyone information in various forms.
Yeah. We've been invited to a few things as well. There's an upcoming Twitter Spaces later in the month that we should be announcing shortly with one of the very big exchanges. They've invited us to come and talk about Dogecoin. I won't mention who, but there's a lot of things coming up in the future as well, which we'll keep people abreast of.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, we can, I don't know if we want to address any of the out-hanging stuff. I know there's people who are probably saying, well, they didn't answer this question, and I still have misgivings about the foundation because they didn't answer this. Like, I just want to kind of speak as a person to people right now, that this has been difficult and this has been stressful for all of us, and we're still trying to find our footing, but I do think it's going better now. So there are things, where maybe, let's say we had a situation where somebody famous said something that we didn't expect, and that took us by surprise as well, right? We can't. Sometimes we have to be careful as to what we say out there to not upset people. So I don't know if I'm getting across what I'm trying to say here is that we have to sometimes pull some punches when we're talking out loud. So that's why some things don't get answered, is because we end up upsetting influential people.
Well,
we don't want to do that.
It's not just that. It's also simply that as much as we are a very small organization, Dogecoin is not a small phenomenon in the world. So everything we do gets scrutinized and very easily picked up by media. So that too adds to this. We have to be careful about how we approach certain things, because as soon as the primary Twitter account mentions something or likes something, that has ripple effects that spread out and that create a huge amount of additional media attention, of additional attention by people. So
and people fill in their own dots and fill in their own blanks and start conspiracies as well. So
we kind of have to always balance this, and we try very hard to do this, and we're always happy to find ways to improve in doing this. But it's really, really hard to, and really, really frustrating for us as well, because in a lot of cases you just think, I would be happy to just explain this to people, but if we try to do that, and if we aren't incredibly careful, this is going to result in a huge amount of additional issues with other people who are trying to take this out of context and stuff like that. So it's something that we have to navigate, because that's part of the responsibility of being the Dogecoin Foundation, but where we can just basically ask everyone to have a little bit of patience with us and know that we do want to keep you informed. We do want to be as transparent as reasonably possible in all cases, and we'll work to.
So I will just
do the best.
I just want to add, kind of as a sum of all the people who were originally talking to us as the foundation are still talking to us, and it is on a friendly basis, and I understand that certain people have to say things for whether it's plausible deniability or SEC reasons, but there is no bad blood. But we just can't go and make announcements for people. So we just leave things to status quo and keep talking to people, keep working things out. So
I think that's the end of our questions list. Jens, do you want to sing a jingle or something? Like, how does the outro work on this thing?
I am good at singing, but I don't want to torture you with that.
I think the positive that I want to end on is that people are going to start seeing some actual results soon. And I mean, yeah, it'll be walk before run, but there will be some tangibles soon. I don't want to call them deliverables because we're not a company like that. We're not a corporation working for a client, but there will be tangibles very, very shortly that people will be able to get their hands on and play with and see in action. And hopefully, the rest of 2022 and this summer, we'll see people take interest in Dogecoin again. And I don't want to say hype, but energy. I think we're going to see more energy this year.
It's probably worth mentioning that those, those not deliverables, whatever you want to call them, isn't just to do with our projects. We have been working with a number of organizations who are looking to integrate Dogecoin. I'm not going to mention who they are because these things are, commercial in confidence, and we don't want to steal their thunder. But expect to see, more people, more interesting names coming online supporting Dogecoin in the months to come. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening behind the scenes.
There are a lot of projects in store. Yeah, there are a lot of projects in store for Dogecoin that I know people are like, well, why can't you tell us? It's supposed to be open. Well, they are companies and they are working on their own things and they don't really necessarily want every move they make broadcast. But we are trying to make sure that they are able to do what they're about to. So we are enabling them, hopefully. We're enablers.
All right. How do we end this, Jens?
Pretty simply, but I just wanted to thank the two of you and also everyone who's been watching. We are going to announce anything about other Q&As on our social media channels and work on improving the technical side of things. It's been great being with you, Tim and Michi, and it's been great seeing the responses from the community. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, great morning, great evening, or good night, wherever you are. And remember to do only good every day.
And remember that we are accessible. Write to us, talk to us.
Yes, we always love to hear from people. Write to us, write emails to us, write on Twitter, on the Discords. Yes, absolutely. And
don't send any bombs.
Send cookies.
No bombs, please. Yeah, cookies, not bombs. Yes.